Now we are moving on to understanding the other aspects of the salient features of the Indian Constitution. One of the finest aspect is about the democratic system that we have. The Constitution of India lays a lot of emphasis on democratic values, and a number of democratic institutions have been established to give shape to this particular idea. The center, the states, the local self-governing bodies, all these follow democratic principles, and all elections from Gram Panchayat to parliament level, we follow the democratically elected government rules. And though democracy can survive if citizens are not allowed fundamental rights, we need to, the democracy is being insisted and that is being celebrated only when we have guaranteed the fundamental rights. So, the Indian Constitution has granted a number of valuable fundamental rights to all the citizens. So, the next aspect is about discussing about fundamental rights. So, prior to independence, if you look at prior to independence, that we were ruled by the British. They controlled the freedom movement and they offered very little to the people to assemble, to discuss, to deliberate and to. So, at the Constituent Assembly there was a lot of discussions about giving everything to the public. Actually, they wanted to make it people should be free to assemble, people should be free to write, free to liberate. So, they want to give all the rights to the public. So, fundamental rights is being inspired by the problems and perils and all disadvantages they faced during the freedom struggle. They all wanted to pass on to the public. They want to have a so liberal country. That's what the writer Gautam Bhatia, he is a lawyer in the Supreme Court who has written very recently in the Hindustan Times. He pointed out that we have been suffering from, we suffered a lot, and one particular thing is that vocabulary of civil rights, the freedom of speech, association and assembly. These have been articulated very well in the Constitution in the form of freedom and the fundamental rights, that would allow them to express their aspirations, engage in political and cultural dissent. So, actually the Constitution talks about dissent, that we have to express dissent then when there is a need, and create a public sphere that would form the basis of self-government. We need to have a public sphere where we need to discuss and deliberate, and we have to form an opinion. We need to talk to the government. We not need to talk truth to the power, so that we can have a very powerful government. So, in 1920s, a vocabulary of freedom, equality and access to public spaces was articulated, particularly that access to the public spaces was denied in the name of caste and other thing. So, constitution makers, they wanted to have allow the people to access to the public spaces and to engage with them against a specific kind of oppression visited on the people by social and cultural institutions. Ambedkar, in his last speech to the Constituent Assembly, highlighting the trinity of liberty, equality and fraternity that frame the fundamental rights of the chapter. Ambedkar observed that liberty cannot be divorced from equality, equality cannot be divorced from liberty. They are both go together. Nor can liberty and equality be divorced from fraternity. So, liberty, equality and fraternity have to go together. Without equality, liberty would produce the supremacy of the few over the many. Equality without liberty would kill individual initiative. Without fraternity, liberty would produce the supremacy of a few over the many. Without fraternity, liberty and equality could not become a natural course of things. It would require a constable to enforce them. That is what Ambedkar told in the while concluding the assembly discussions. The Constitution thus intended to a deeper democratization of the Indian public and social life, and envisaged that this would be accomplished through the constitutional fundamental rights chapter. So, India's constitution is at the end of the day a transformative constitution. This is what Brahim Bhatia argues. It transforms the subject of citizens and bring ideas of freedom and equality into spaces they would have otherwise never come, says Gautam Bhatia, an advocate of Supreme Court of India, in an article published in the Hindustan Times. So, the fundamental rights incorporated in the part 3 of the Constitution are as under. They are right to equality, right to freedom, that is article 1922, and right against exploitation, article 23 to 24, and right to freedom of religion, that being a secular country, we have the right to freedom of religion that has been guaranteed through articles 25, 26, 27, 28, and cultural and educational rights, article 29, 30, and right to constitutional remedies. These are the 6 major right to the freedom of the fundamental rights have been guaranteed in the Constitution, and right to education has been added to one of the additional fundamental right. Now, we move on to the fundamental duties. The fundamental duties were inserted in Part 4 of the Constitution through 42nd Amendment Act 1976 and Article 51A. The fundamental duties are to abide by the Constitution and respect the national flag and national anthem. There are long list. I will cite one or two so that you can catch up the spirit of the idea, right? What are the duties that is being expected from the citizens? To uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of the India, to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture, and to develop the scientific temper. And we need to have a rational mind that is being guaranteed and that is being given as one of the directive ideas, right? We need to have the duties to respect the nation with the help of having the scientific temper, humanism and the spirit of inquiry and reform. These cannot be enforced by writs. Petition asks them to enforce these kind of thing, but can be promoted only by the constitutional methods. Their inclusion has been justified on the basis that they would help to strengthen our democracy. So, we move on to the last but one final point, right. We have only two more points to discuss about the salient features of the Constitution. This one is about the welfare state. We already touched upon the welfare state when we discussed about the preamble, but we need to discuss a little more about what is a welfare state. Our Constitution aims to building at a welfare state. We want to have a welfare state because it is a democratic country where we want to ensure that everyone has equal opportunity profit making. Our Constitution is opposed to the concentration of wealth and means of production, that concentration of wealth at one particular group or 1% of people, 1% of the entire population holding the 80% or 50% of the entire wealth is not permissible. This is not possible in a country like India, and workers should be involved in management and they should get fair wages. That involvement of workers at least at the public sector levels, that we need representation of the workers at the highest level of decision making, and children should not be exposed to hazards. That is how that we have the child labor eradication acts and other things. All these provisions are expected to help in building a welfare state. These are the components that has helped us to create a welfare state. Now, we move on to the final point. Now, we will look into that how we enacted the Constitution, from where we got it. Actually, during the Constituent Assembly, the members travelled across the globe to get the inspiration from various parts of the world, to get whatever that is being good in any part of the world, they borrowed it so that we can have a beautiful and more meaningful Constitution that can withstand the time. So, architects of the Constitution were most heavily influenced by the British model, because we were ruled by British for more than 200 years, and we thought that that would be the most apt model because we were familiar. And somebody said that in article the Indian Constitution Act 1935, that is also was there. So, we thought that we can follow the parliamentary democracy. So, British was the first inspiration. In addition to that, a number of principles are adopted from the Constitution of the United States of America, because they have the most rigid written constitution, and we thought that whatever that is good for the country can be, like separation of powers among the major branch of the government and the establishment of the Supreme Court. Actually, prior to independence, we had federal court. We called it Supreme Court after the Constitution has been prepared and dedicated to the country. The principles adopted from Canada were federal government with strong center. Actually, Canada has a very strong center, and also distribution of powers between central government and the state government, along with placing residuary powers. Whatever that is not spelt out is being given to the central government. That is called the residuary powers with the central government. And from Ireland, we got the directive principles of state policy, and that has been adapted from the Ireland Constitution. When we have emergency, right, when the country is in any kind of problem from the external forces, then the first thing is that give all the fundamental rights, suspend all the fundamental rights. That is the idea that we got it from the Federal Republic of Germany. And from Australia, the idea of having a concurrent list of shared powers, state list, then union list, then concurrent list. So, the concurrent list idea was so that both can operate. For example, education that both state and central have, and these kind of things have been inspired from the Australian government. The terminology was given. So, it was asked to Ambedkar that is it good to copy something from outside, will it be amount to plagiarism of thing? Then Ambedkar was very cool and told them that this is not the thing, and he said that as to the accusation that the draft constitution has been produced or reproduced a good part of the provisions of the Government of India 1935, I make no apologies. There is nothing to be ashamed of in borrowing. It involves no plagiarism. Nobody holds any patent rights in the fundamental ideas of the Constitution. So, we are very liberal to borrow from the most country, not everything that we, whatever that is being more important to us, we borrowed from them. Indian Constitution has been amended over the years to reflect the new concerns of the polity. Often a major change in the Constitution means that a change in the fundamental nature of the country. That's how the constitutional makers thought, and they borrowed it from all the part of the world. So, with so many features of the Indian Constitution, right from the preamble that we discussed about the organs, and we discussed about fundamental rights, fundamental duties, that is principles of state policy. So, Indian Constitution has been made as one of the finest document with the inputs of the statesmen who thought, discussed, and produced one of the great document which has been withstood for more than 70 years. It will go a long way, as they very rightly pointed out, that it is not a rigid document, it is a flexible document without affecting the structure. That is why that we were able to transfer with the 17 general elections over the 70 years, we were able to transfer the power from one party to the other without having any kind of them. The same time in 1940s, there are many countries have got liberated, but they are all not in the good path as we have been progressing. And the thanks, we have to be very thankful to the makers of the Constitution who have made a very beautiful Constitution for the country. I hope that this would have given you a complete picture about understanding the Constitution as a media scholars and media researchers and media students, that you can have a basic idea about what the Constitution is about. With this, I thank you for listening to this particular lecture, and we will meet again to listen to another aspect of the Constitution and the lawmaking. Thank you.